not too much done on the bike tonight. This evening after work we were actually staining one of the decks, so that took up most of the evening. I just came out here quickly to lock up, but I did do the bearings on the rear wheel. They soaked in petrol overnight and they were nice and clean this morning. They're fine. There was tons of grease in them. I just repacked them with new high temperature wheel bearing grease. You don't have to completely fill that center spacer tube or anything like that. You just put some grease on the bearings. Reassembled all of that. That seems good. That's the little dust cover that sort of fits on. I had to do a little bit of panel beating on that. It was a bit bent, but that now fits nicely on there. I think it's meant to be a tight fit on the shaft that goes through the middle and a loose fit on the hub, so I don't think that spins. I don't think it's supposed to. It's just a dust shield. And I'm looking at the starter handle. I have no idea how you're supposed to get this apart. It's obviously pressed on and keyed on, but there must have been some special pulling tool for that, or they just never bothered. Because I can't get any sort of puller underneath there to push this off. I've tried gently heating it and hammering it, like punching it out. That doesn't really work. So I figured I'm going to have to try and fix this stop in situ. And with a lot of careful hammering on various bits of steel, like my railway track, I've been able to get it so that it does fit and it is flat. So before, this was all bent up and it was hitting this. This is basically the stop for the starter. So I'm guessing what happened was this bike was hard to start and somebody was really giving it some stick to get it to crank over, and ended up ripping this, which is basically what's happened. So this is back on there. Fitting this thing into there is a real pain in the neck. There's a trick to it that I figured out, which is you have to rotate that around so it'll fit through the little slot. But then what you need to do is, instead of trying to get these two to fit over the studs at the same time, you can rotate the aluminium part, get that over the studs and get it pushed home, and then rotate this bit later. That was the only way I could do it anyway. So I think what I'm going to do is basically put a spot of weld on this. I have to be careful how I do this because it's going to shrink, which is probably fine. It'll pull it in, but I think I'm just going to put a spot of MIG weld on here to hold that in the right position, and then take this off, and then I should be able to nicely TIG weld. I may just MIG it on here actually, and then I'll have to take this off and grind it carefully because I can't separate all of this, so you can't easily get into there. But I'm going to go and look in the forum a bit more and in all the technical notes and see if there is some trick to getting this off, because if I can get this apart then I can fix it easily. But it's just trying to fix it while it's attached like this is going to be awkward. You can rotate things out of the way, so you know, I can weld it, and then I can get a flap disc in there if I need to sort of flatten it out. But yeah, it's annoying but fixable. And then I'm still using the original handle. Keep as many original bits as possible. So, oops. That will be, I think, a job for tomorrow now. Yeah, it's about 20 to 9. I wouldn't have been able to sleep if I hadn't welded it, or at least got it tacked. It's awful metal to weld. It was spitting a lot. Unless one of the settings is wrong on my MIG welder, but it's such a simple welder, I don't think so. It was just dirty. So I think I'll probably end up TIGging this back together. Probably just TIG weld it, or I might TIG braze it, and then I can sort of get in here and grind this all smooth and nice again. You can see how this has been bent out. So this should be a straight line, but this piece is curved. I've tried heading it back in, and this is as close as I could get it, just because I can't easily get to this to even hold it. So I think that'll work. The stop should still work. I'll have to check if it's going a little bit too far, because this has moved out. But if that's moved out, I can just put something on here. I'm sure it'll be fine. I don't think it can really go too far. But you can see why this is hard to assemble, because there's this sort of keyhole shaped hole. So you have to get that in like that. Rotate that around, and then you can... it's a bit hard to do with one hand. But then you can get that in place and sort of wiggle it home. And this rotates independently. There we go. And then you can position this where it needs to go, which is kind of around the other way, but yeah, awkward. Tonight I've come out and I've welded up the broken starter handle stop. It was a bit hard to sort of smooth out the weld afterwards, because I can't easily get to that piece, but I just sort of filed it a little bit. It's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be. That should work, hopefully. And I figured out the trick to getting this thing back together. What you do is you line up the top of the starter handle and the top of the little cover plate, and then you can drop that down. And then once that's dropped down, you can rotate that round to where it needs to be, kind of like that. There's no gaskets or anything on this, because of course there shouldn't be any oil in there. And then now I can just tap that down. It's a little bit tight because this has moved, so the holes have moved a bit, but there's just enough clearance to get that to sit down. And then I can put the bolts, the nuts back on. I did look up in the forum. Apparently this takes a lot of pressure to get this interference fit shaft undone. It's on a key to keep the orientation correct. I think it said 6 to 8 ton press needed. And the problem is there's no easy way to hold this thing. So chances are you'd end up destroying it. So it seemed much more sensible to try and not remove that and weld it up more or less in situ. This is how the service manual says to do it. You tie the little starter lever up to the breather tube, you hook the spring over the stud, and now I need to slide the gearbox into place, making sure the dowels are there, and then you get it almost all the way closed, and then you can lift this up over the boss, I'm guessing down here, and that's what holds the spring in place. I may just put a little smear of a drop of oil or something on there just to lubricate that. Yeah, probably a drop of oil will do it, and then I can put this back on. Like I say, I already know that this should line up, so that should be good. Got the gearbox back on, and getting the little spring in place isn't too hard. You just get it almost closed up, and then you can just pop the spring up over the stud on this half, which is where it naturally wants to sit. And the little bit of string might not be obvious what that's for, but basically what it's for is to hold the little arm that goes to the starter quadrant up, so that the arm on the starter handle can slide underneath it. So you have the string there, you have this all the way forwards, which means, thinking about it, the little arm on here is kind of at that position, and the little arm on here is kind of in this position. So when you start, it pulls round and it lifts that arm up, which flicks the the gear round. So you need the string to lift this arm up so that this can slide underneath it when you put the gearbox home. And then you basically cut the string, and you can pull the string out just through the little gap there before you bolt it all up. I can't fully test this because, of course, I can't spin it over because I don't have cylinders. So doing that would be a really silly thing to do. But I was able to test it enough that I can feel that is starting to engage with the starter pawls. And I was able to check the operation of the clutch. I can check the operation of the gearbox. I think that's first. Then I'm not sure which way round second and third are. I guess that's back to second. It could be the other way round. I'd need to look it up. But that's either second or third, or that's some gear. That's another gear. Of course, there's no synchros. It's all dog teeth. So that's why I can't get third gear at the moment. It's not lined up. You'd have to line the teeth up. But again, I don't want to rotate this because it'll move the pistons and I don't want to damage them. But I was able to test the clutch. I use a spare clutch housing which has the same spline as this. And I just sort of put that over there. And I was able to depress the clutch, which is pretty hard. I had to wrap something around that, push as hard as I could, but I was able to test that the clutch is working. Need to look up in the manual how you're supposed to adjust it. There's this little eccentric bolt here that needs to be adjusted, so I didn't forget the clutch pin. So that's basically all back together. This one here isn't done up tight yet because that's where the exhaust box fits on, the silencer box. So engine gearbox is back together. Cylinders are in the evaporust, which had developed a bit of a weird skin on top, but it is doing the trick. And I was just starting to clean up one of the cylinder heads, which is in this CLR type stuff, to get all the gunk out of the inside of it. I still need to scrape it a bit more, I think. These were completely clogged, so I need to make sure these are all nice and free. I'll probably put it through the ultrasonic cleaner, and then, yeah, you can see the gunk coming out of it now. This calcium lime stuff is doing the trick. It is slowly dissolving it. And then I will mount this to my little jig, and I will reface this. Just take a skim off it just to clean it up. Make sure that that is at the right level as well. Because obviously that spigot fits into the cylinder. If you take material off here, you need to take some off there, otherwise you could run the danger of the piston hitting it. But, that is working well in there, and I need to take that cover off and have a look at the ignition, which I've been ignoring up until now, but I've got new points and things for it. I don't know if I mentioned yesterday, I know I mentioned the wheel, but my tyres arrived. These are Mitas, I think it's an H02, which is the ribbed one, which goes on the front, and a 03, something like that, which is the more blocky one, which goes on the rear, and that seems to be how they did it originally. And these are 18 by 3.25. Also got new tubes, and I've got new rim bands on the way, just because the one that came off the tyre is a bit manky, so I'll clean those up. So that's the rear wheel done. So head, cylinders, ignition, inlet manifold, that won't go on until I reassemble everything. I think I can put that on afterwards. I think you can get to everything. And I need to make up the little water pipe things. So I'll see what bar I've got that I can just make these out of mild steel. And it does say in some of the books and things that the LE is overcooled, so I might be able to make them a little bit thicker, because losing a little bit of volume there shouldn't matter too much, I guess. Not sure. I suspect that's not super critical, so I don't need to make them too thin. I can sort of get an idea. Well, it's a bit hard actually, because that's the problem, they corrode away from the inside, so it's a bit hard to know what thickness they are. I don't have any tube that's really suitable. I think that's too big. I may just have to order some steel bar to do it. Oh, that's looking really good. Having a look at the ignition system, I'm guessing these are the original coils. There's the points. I think the coils are wired in series. I'm not quite sure. There's two things going on here. There's coils on the back of this as well, which is for the like the dynamo system. The generator system is behind here. So on the front is the ignition. I have gently beaten out the front. These were all caved in, I think just from people cranking down on the nuts way too hard. So I've smoothed that out. It's not perfect. Nothing on it's perfect, it's used. But I've got it back to more or less where it needs to go. That fits back on there. I'll clean the felt stuff, that fell off. But I'll re-glue that onto there. But I do want to clean it, so I may soak it in petrol or something overnight. I've degreased it, but I think it is going to need more than that. And I'm wondering if I need to go check the wiring diagram, but I think I should just be able to hook this up to 6 volts and flick the points and check if I've got spark on the spark plugs. I think. Don't see why not. I just need to figure out how that's wired up. I think it's just this wire and a ground. Because yeah, these other ones seem to go off to the dynamo, and that's what this other cable is. There's 3 wires coming from that. They go off to the rectifier and then to the battery, I guess. So I'll go look up the manuals and see. I've got the head in the ultrasonic, that's the buzzing in the background. My little shoe last thing this was good for sort of hammering this over and just using metal shaper Tom's slapper. It's just aluminium, so it's easy to work. As far as I can tell, this is the advanced spring system. That all seems okay, but yeah, a little bit more investigation needed. I'm going to look this up in the book. The ignition couldn't be simpler. It's just a power feed, and it goes to both coils and through the points. So I've got it hooked up to a 6 volt battery. The polarity for this doesn't really matter, it's going to work either way around. But I did have to adjust the points so they were closed. I gave them a bit of a clean with some paper as well. But now, possibly, if I open and close the points, there is a spark. It's not a very big spark, but there is a spark. And interesting, it just fires both spark plugs at the same time. So it means you're going to get, I think you end up getting a spark at the bottom of the stroke as well. I'm not sure. The pistons move in sequence, or you'll get a spark that isn't on the right, isn't on the compression stroke, something like that. Because the pistons are both at top dead center at the same time, but of course only one's going to be on the power stroke. So I guess you get a spark on the exhaust stroke on the other cylinder. So that shows the coil is working and the capacitor is good. That spark does look very weak to me, so I don't know if that'll be enough to fire it over, but it's enough to try. Just realized this is the head from my original bike that I've machined to clean up the water passages and so on. You can see there's a little bit of a step there because this one is slightly shorter than that one. But the other thing I noticed that's interesting is this has a much smaller spark plug thread. So, not quite sure what's going on there exactly. So I think the plugs I've got fit this size, which I think is 14mm, not sure. I don't know what that size is, probably 1/2 inch, 12. So I don't know what's going on there. I'll have to see what plugs I've got. But it's kind of annoying because this new bike, as I got it, had 2 cylinder heads, and one of them's been drilled out for even bigger plugs. There's not even really enough room. I think that's a modification someone's done. So yeah, need to look into that as well. But at least these are both 200cc heads going by the spigot here. And I should be able to make these work. It's another hot day. I'm out in the shed after work again. Tomorrow's my in-town day, so I won't get to do anything tomorrow. So I came out here to try and get a bit done today. And I'm doing a few things. I decided to have a go at welding up the retired head because this one has the right 10mm spark plug. So there's something strange going on with these spark plug holes. This is original, and that takes original plugs. That's a 10mm thread. This is the one off my parts bike that I've refaced, and that takes I think it's a 12mm plug. So I suspect that's been drilled out and retapped in the past. And then this new bike came with the retired head and this used one, which has been drilled and tapped for an even bigger spark plug. It's pretty grimed up as well. I might have a go at cleaning this one up and welding up the hole and drilling and tapping a new hole. So I will put this into my CLR type stuff. I have the heads have come out of the evaporust and I've put them through the ultrasonic cleaner just to make sure they're nice and clean. And to fix the water ports, I looked this up on the forum, and because it's not a pressurized system, people use all sorts of things. Steel tube, mild steel tube, stainless steel tube, copper pipe, aluminium pipe. Somebody even said they used plastic irrigation type pipe, and that all works fine. So I've found some steel tube that's the right diameter, and I've just got it in my metal bright solution to get rid of the surface rust. I think the solution's been sitting around a bit long and it's not really working. There's 2 sizes of tube. They actually, the bigger one slides over the outer one, and I need that because of the head that's had the water jacket opened up. So I'm going to make new water stubs out of those, and that should take care of the water system. I need to get I want to get a ball hone just to clean up the inside of the bores. Those dingle ball hones don't really take any material away, they just resurface it a bit or clean it up. So I need to get one of those. The one I've got is too big, won't fit down a 50mm bore. And I thought I'll have a go at re-welding a head where it's all gone around the exhaust ports. and it's taken me a little bit of fiddling to get the settings right and the heat right and that kind of thing. And it is, I do call this Mr. Blobby because the welds aren't great, aren't pretty, but it's really hard welding this old crappy metal. So I've got it on, I think I've got it set to about 100 amps, although I'm not using all of that, and full cleaning effect on the AC TIG. It got easier as I got further around because the whole piece is now heated up. This is now super hot. I'm just letting it cool down naturally. I don't want to shock it or anything, but that may work. The problem is the weld's kind of on the top. I'm not sure what it's going to be like on the sides. The insides of the passages are super hard to clean, and I'm wondering if maybe I should have used a tungsten burr to kind of cut away even further and then rebuild it. But if this doesn't work, I can always do that. So I'm going to let this cool down. I'll have to run a drill just through those middle two holes, and then I can fit that to my little mandrel, put that in the lathe and turn those down and see if that fixes the issue. What I'm trying to do here is, it'd be really nice to end up with two heads with 10mm plugs that are in good condition. This I also need to put on the mandrel and just take a very light skim off, I think. And it might need to go in my cleaning solution again. You can see there's still some gunk in there. I've just noticed as well that this head is a 3-port, so maybe I might actually fill in these middle 2 ports, because I don't believe you need them. These are said to be overcooled. That 3-port head, I believe, is what they went to later, and I'm pretty sure the head gaskets I've got are 3-port ones anyway, so these ports won't do anything. So I think I'm actually going to fill those in. But if I can get that head to look like this head, that would be nice. This one with a 12mm plug I'm not too worried about, because that will go on the parts bike if I reassemble that. Pretty sure that's where we're at. When you're welding like this, you always have to keep an eye on not getting the tungsten into the pool and contaminating it, or you have to keep everything clean. You don't want anything getting into the weld. This is the first time I've ever had a wasp fly into the weld as I was doing it. Instant death for the wasp, but yeah, that was interesting. I don't know where it came from. It just suddenly, there was a flash and then there's a dead wasp in the middle of my weld. So I need to clean that up and start again. Welded up the middle 2 ports. I've made the rest of the welds a little bit less blobby, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this machines, and if I've actually got decent enough welds there that it's built up the edges. We shall see once it cools down. I started cleaning up the head and I had to do a little bit more welding, and I completely forgot that it was held in with plastic plugs, so that didn't go well. But I've re-welded it. I'll let that cool down and then I'll finish machining that. I didn't go deep enough to fill in those holes in the middle, but that'll be alright. The gasket will actually block those off. I just want to make sure I've got plenty of sealing surface around the edges, and I'll clean up these as well. So I think that might work. While that's cooling down, I earlier machined up my little new water stubs. So this is just a piece of tube that I found that happened to be the right diameter. That's 22mm. Turned down a little bit on the end so that that is a, I wouldn't even call it a press fit. It's not loose, but it's not tight, and the system isn't under pressure, so you don't need to worry about pressure pulling it out. So I should be able to seal it in with some Loctite. And this one has been bored out, so I had to do a special one for that. I soldered an extra piece of tube around the outside, happened to have some that fitted, and then I turned that down So again, that'll press into there. So I'm just going to clean these up with some acetone, and then I'll put them in. Fixed my water stubs. I had to do a second one with a sleeve. I thought only one of these holes was oversized, but it was oversized on both of them. So made up another one. Probably give these a quick wire brush on some of these surfaces and give them a spray of black engine paint once I've cleaned them up or finished cleaning them up. And this is the head I welded up. Still a bit close to the edge there, so I may have to have another quick go there, but I'm just a bit wary because every time I weld it I have to reface it, and of course it can't just keep getting thinner and thinner, so I'm not sure I want to go much more than that. So I might actually try, I've got some special aluminium epoxy. I can't remember what temperature it goes up to. It's called DevCon, and that may be enough to put in there, because there is a gasket there. This passage isn't open on the gasket, so if that's flat right there, that should be enough to seal, possibly. I'm not sure, but all I can do is try it. This is the other one that cleaned up okay, and if this one doesn't work, I've got the other one here. The only difference is this uses the 12mm plug and this one uses a 10mm, which would be a little bit annoying, but can probably live with that. Yeah, I might try that with the epoxy, just to clean up that just that little edge, because of course this is all, it's cooled, so it shouldn't get too hot, and I'm pretty sure that epoxy is high temp, so it should be able to take it. It's just there to help the gasket sit flat. But I think that's all I can really do tonight. And I'm in town tomorrow, so I'll probably come out after dinner and have a clean up, just so everything's nice and tidy for Friday and the weekend. And then probably back onto the Riley would be a good idea before I forget how to make guards.